My name is John Pierre. I'm the Chancellor of the Southern University Law Center. And we're so happy to have you here today at the second annual Henrietta Symposium. And we're here at this beautiful facility, which now has the name of the Dr. Leon R. Tarver Cultural and Heritage Center. And I want you to meet the Chair Emeritus, President Emeritus, Dr. Leon R. Tarver, who 25 years ago had a vision for this place so that we could come together and foster an atmosphere where our heritage and our culture could be learned, celebrated, and honored. And we thank you for your vision, Dr. Tarver. Tonight we also have the chair of our Southern University Board of Supervisors, his wife, and his son, Chairman Myron Lawson. And we have another member of our Southern University Board of Supervisors here with us, Ms. Mabel Gaines. We had Mr. Fondell here earlier, but I think he's headed back to Lake Charles. But Mr. Raymond Fondell was here earlier, and we thank him for coming and spending some time today. Today is a great day because this is the second day of spring. And we're sitting in this beautiful edifice, sitting on the banks of the mighty Mississippi River. We are basically here at a place that has historical significance. This land once was the hunting grounds, the traditional hunting grounds of the United Houma tribe. And it also was once a plantation where enslaved people worked on this land. And the bell that was rung to begin the day sits in the John B. Cade Library here on campus. I also want to recognize Mrs. Kerr, who is the great leader of our museum in this cultural heritage center. Thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight. We have students from Southern University. We actually also have some high school students from Helix Academy. I want to recognize them. Students from the Law Center, friends, and supporters. This event could not happen if it weren't for the hard work of a lot of people who are dedicated to Southern University Law Center. And I appreciate the leadership of Professor Lisa Alford.
Yeah, yeah,
Who many years ago wrote a law review article that talked about unjust enrichment and how there was an unjust enrichment to all those who took advantage of the HeLa cells produced from Henrietta Lacks.
yeah.
And that in time there would have to be some reckoning for those particular actors. And I appreciate that she had the courage to put that in writing and to start a movement.
That's right.
Amen. Yes,
she did. So I've always said that the story of Henrietta Lacks should live forever because it's a story on one level that's a great tragedy, but it's also a story of how we must always recognize our value in society. Because her healer cells have led to many cures, development of many different types of vaccines. And that is one of those gifts from God.
That's right.
That we have to recognize. And it represents the gift that our people, the descendants of the Africans who were brought to this country, have always provided to this country with little or no recognition.
Amen.
So in an era when there is a movement to eliminate the teaching of our history, we must pick up the mantle and teach our own history to our children, our grandchildren, so they will know that history, and therefore it can never be washed away. This year, this particular event is extremely important because we are going to humanize Henrietta Lacks in a way that was never done before. We're going to elevate a conversation of fertility, health, equity, and maternal health. And there's so many issues related to that, especially when it comes to disparities facing African American women in the area of maternal health. And we must continue to have those conversations. We must continue to elevate that conversation to a level where it's policy, decision making, and we must never let that conversation die. Never. We also had, he was not able to stay, but he will be here tomorrow, Dr. Whitfield, Ronnie Whitfield, on our board of supervisors, also a medical doctor. And we thank him for his contributions to this event that's this evening and tomorrow, because it's more than just a conversation. It's about bringing health care discussions to our community, which are very, very important. And as you know, we have really just been victimized by COVID-19 and other types of pandemic events. And we have to be mindful of that and always keep that conversation forward. We have to always be thinking about how we protect ourselves going forward for the next pandemic, because there will be other pandemics. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Professor Delisa Alford.
We have the chairman.
Good.
Okay. You sure?
Okay.
I can't figure out, yes.
All right.
And we have two very, very distinguished guests. And I'll let her introduce them. Of course, they need no introduction, but she will do the introductions. And we are honored to have both of you here. And God bless you all.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I just like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We are here to honor Mrs. Henrietta Lacks. And being from Louisiana, we put a handle on it. Mrs. Henrietta Lacks, who was a mother, a wife, and a mother, a grandmother, and we have Henrietta Lacks' legacy here today. So I want the Lacks family members who have flown here to show their appreciation and honor of their grandmother.
Yeah.
And what better way to show the humanity of Mrs. Henrietta Lacks than by showing her legacy.
Amen.
So today, we are here to have a conversation. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
We hear you.
You hear me? You know I can talk loudly, and he'll talk about how much I talk, Mr. Crump will. But in the meantime, I got the mic. So I just want to say that it is an honor to be here today because we are amidst a reality that can be somewhat discerning, but today we have before us two of the most prolific authors and thinkers. When I say thinkers, I mean thought leaders. And I want to say to them, thank you for seeing it necessary to step foot on this sacred ground with your presence. So thank you. We have the author, Pulitzer Prize winning creator.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Yes. She is, if you don't know by now, Emmy Award winning documentary of the 1619 Project. This sister speaks truth to power.
Amen.
And at all times. And she makes me nervous when I watch her on MSNBC because she does not take kindly to the wrong question. I love it. I love it. I'm going to allow her to show her genius in terms of her responses, the seriousness of what she has to say. And secondly, but not secondly, we have the Attorney General of our people and all the people, Attorney Crump. Without any further ado, I want to start talking about I want to get the questions here. We tried to set up a conversational table here. You see the table here, we have the books. Now, those of you who are too young to know what a Jet magazine is, it's a little small. You imagine a magazine that chronicle our black lives. Yeah. And then if you had a big enough coffee table, you had a big ebony. Yeah. It was about this big, but it chronicled our lives. And what we have an opportunity today to do is to chronicle our own lives. Because we are in a safe venue, a venue that we can get together, commune together, and think deeply. And that's what I love about this particular being here on the bluff. Coming from up north, Shreveport, Louisiana. I found myself down south, and I had to learn their ways. But it was okay, because when I knew if you could understand black family, you could understand HBCU. All right? So right now, and you did exactly what I needed you to do, call and response. I need to know you're out there. I need to feel the love, the energy, the passion that is necessary for us to get through this moment. And we are in a moment. And right now, I'm going to start with the questions. Ms. Nikole Hannah-Jones, what do you desire, readers of your Pulitzer Prize, viewers of your Emmy Award docuseries, the 1619 Project, what do you desire them to take away or to glean from?
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
I know they had y'all eating this fried chicken, but please try to pay attention. Serving that type of food before a talk is never good. That's why I didn't eat any. Very happy to be here, Southern. Very happy to be here with Professor DeLiso. I also believe in the honorific in the People's AG, and just happy to be in conversation, and especially with the Lax family. I mean, when you, and let me just warn y'all, sometimes I do cuss. So no disrespect to my elders, but I come from a cussing family, and sometimes it just comes out, but I'm gonna try not to. So when we think about what do I want people to take from the 1619 project, I think the story of the Lax family is what I want people to take from it, which is that we have been erased from our own story. We have been erased from our own history.
Wow.
That we have made these invaluable contributions to the society. America would not exist as it does without black people, period. And they teach us that we contributed our labor, right? So they'll acknowledge that maybe some of the wealth of this country was built from black people, but we contributed far more than that, right? Our intellectual contributions, our creative contributions, and most importantly, what democracy we have was born from black resistance. We built democracy in the United States. And so when I conceived of the 1619 Project, it was understanding that history is not what happened on what day and who did it, because what happened, happened. History, that the way we commonly think about it, is memory. It's what are we taught to remember about the past? Whose stories do we uplift and whose stories do we bury?
Tell it.
And who has the power to shape our national memory and to what ends? So black people are the most inconvenient people to the story of America, right? Because how do you tell a story of American exceptionalism? How do you tell the story of the only nation founded on the ideal of liberty and explain why are black people here in the first place?
My Lord.
We're only here because y'all lied. We're only here because you didn't believe that those ideas actually should exist for all of us. But the problem with us is we did believe it. And we did say even though those words didn't apply to us, we were going to make them apply to us. So when I think about the story of Miss Henrietta Lacks, I think about the story of every black person in America, every one of our ancestors, who was erased from the collective story of America, but who quietly, silently has shaped everything that we see, and that this entire country and the entire world has benefited from.
Wow.
And then you think about that we also are the people who have benefited the least from the things that we have built.
Yes.
The wealth of this country, we benefit the least, right? So that's really what I wanted. I always had two audiences in mind when I pitched the project and when I worked on the project. Of course, I wanted white people to have to acknowledge
The truth.
the truth. Acknowledge what they have done, acknowledge what we have done, but fundamentally acknowledge what our country is, that we have all been taught a lie, that we've been taught a collective lie, we've been taught the history of a country that never existed, and you can't understand January 6th, you can't understand why white nationalists with 90 indictments is the leading presidential candidate for Republicans. You can't explain any of that with 1776. But you can explain it with 1619. You understand?
Yes.
And the last thing, because I'm not the only one supposed to be talking up here, so I'm trying to keep my
Take your
my
time.
answers short.
You know, it's like the black shirt.
My other audience was black folks. Because I wanted us to understand that everything they told us about us is not true. And so many of us, we know, like in our spirit, that there's nothing wrong with us. And yet, if you look at the history that we're taught, if you look at how we're presented in the media, if you look at who they memorialize in monuments, if you look at who we learn about in textbooks, it will have you believing there is something wrong with us. That fundamentally, when I was a child and I came across Jerome Bennett's book, Before the Mayflower, which introduced me to the year 1619 when I was 16 years old, I realized, oh, we actually did have a history. Because I thought they didn't teach us about black folks because black folks didn't do anything worthy of being taught. And so I wanted us to know that you might not have the math, you may not have all the data, you may not have learned all the appropriate history, but that there's nothing wrong with black folks. We're not a problem, we're the solution, and this was a way to help us understand that.
Absolutely. What we are going to do, family, is we're going to contextualize how it has been open season on black people from 1619 to present. So, Attorney Ben Crump, what do you desire readers of your open season, Legalized Genocide of Colored People? Is that the title? Is that not? Legalized side, all right? And your award-winning Netflix Civil that chronicled this book, Open Season. What do you want these attendees and viewers and readers to take away?
Now, thank you, Professor Alfred, and as Chancellor Pierre said, thank you for writing the article on Henrietta Lacks that inspired this landmark litigation. We can never thank you enough. And Nikole, I make a point to do that every time wherever we're in the audience to talk about black academia, who they like to discount, but it was her academia that changed jurisprudence as it relates to this medical racism.
Thank you.
And brothers and sisters, I'm so honored to be here with this sister. This is a bad sister. I'm in awe of Nikole's brilliance. And you all, I'll get to the book in a second, but what she did with the 1619 project is she held a mirror to America's face and said you at least have to acknowledge the hypocrisy. And when we have our best and brightest bold enough and courageous enough to do that, then it sets a precedence for all you future social engineers and civil rights lawyers to come. So if you all want to pattern yourself, not after materialism, but after purpose.
Yes.
You look at Nikole Hannah-Jones. As it relates to open season, two things, Professor Alfred, when I wrote the book, it was after Trayvon and the folks from New York were this is the biggest news story in the world, let's capitalize off of it. And so they kept coming, Attorney Crump, we will have you write a book, you can tell us about Trayvon. So I said, everybody knew about Trayvon. It was the #1 news story in the world. I said, no, if I'm gonna write a book, I wanna write about all the unknown Trayvon Martins in the world. All the little black and brown people face injustices every day that nobody writes about. And so, as we started to write Open Season, the legalized genocide of colored people, which I thought was an honest title. Some people were offended by it. But what I sought to do is to reveal the intellectual justification of discrimination. How in every situation, no matter what you have, poor people of color, especially black people, get the most of injustice and the least of justice in every dynamic. Every dynamic. And so what we try to do is say there is a reason why, even though black men only make up 7% of the population in America, in most states, we make up 50% of the prison population. So, no way that can make sense, Attorney LaRuby May, no way that can make sense. It's only one or two things. Either one, black men are some terrible, evil, thuggish, criminal-minded Negroes, or two, America criminal justice system is a racist criminal justice system that targets black people. It's one or the other. And I choose to believe, like Martin Luther King said, there's some good in the worst of us and some bad in the best of us. All of us just people. White men ain't no different than black men. And if we got those statistics, it's because they targeting us. And somebody needed to write about it and be unafraid to write about it. And that's the second point to the book. Y'all, and Silky Slam, y'all homeboy tried to keep me protected because before I be a puppy dog lawyer, I'll be no lawyer. And so I'm going to speak truth to power. And the second thing when I wrote the book, Attorney Clues, was real simple. I wanted to declare that you can say whatever you want about Ben Crump, but you will have to know that he is an unapologetic defender of black life, black liberty, and black humanity. Whether in the court of law or the court of public opinion. And that's what we did with Henrietta Lacks.
That's right.
Alfred, you and Kim were there. We were arguing in that Baltimore courtroom, and it was almost, they almost wanted to say we were insane. To have the audacity to bring the lawsuit that her family should, they still say it now, right, Alfred and Kim? I mean, they're like, how dare you? How dare you say that these pharmaceutical companies who made billions of dollars from butchering and killing their grandmother should be entitled to a percentage of the profits? How dare you, black people? Y'all are just property. Oh, y'all read 1619 and think y'all entitled now? And so, Suzanne, we went into court with all you great legal academic professors, and we presented the argument, and I'll shut up after this. But I think,
So you won't, but go ahead.
well, I just think it's appropriate.
You need to speak it. Speak.
I think it's appropriate to, we're at the Henrietta Lacks Symposium, to talk
Yes.
about this concept of unjust enrichment.
Yes.
This concept that is a well-established legal principle that seems to apply to everybody else in America except black people.
That's right.
I mean, this legal theory law students that unjust enrichment says that the wrongdoer can't continue to benefit from the wrongdoing. Once we acknowledge a wrongdoing, what happened? And it was a crime what they did to Alfred and Kim's grandmother. And it wasn't different, Nikole. They were doing this to black people all over America. This medical racism, they had the Tuskegee syphilis experiment in Tuskegee. They had the Mississippi appendectomy in Mississippi, where they were sterilizing black women who went into hospitals for routine medical procedures, like the great Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. At 23 years old, she went in for a routine medical procedure and they sterilized her. And because she had a college degree and she questioned what happened to her and found out it wasn't just her, but it was women all over Mississippi and all over Georgia, all over North Carolina. They were doing this to black women. And in Baltimore, Maryland, at Johns Hopkins, they were experimenting on black people to see if a cell could exist outside the human body. And I'm not surprised, Nikole, that Henrietta Lacks, this black woman, cells were the first cells in the course of human history to be able to survive outside of the human body, but not only survive outside the human body, but regenerate every 24 hours. That, I mean, you talk about strong black women, black girl magic. And for 70 years, her cells have been regenerating. Every 24 hours, pharmaceutical companies have made billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. And the fact that her last remaining child died 6 weeks after we finally got the first settlement, even though he had fought over 30 years of his life to get some measure of justice, we went in that courtroom and had the audacity to say that Henrietta Lacks family, Lawrence Lacks, and I mean, he was very frail. He's in the wheelchair, but it was just a victory getting in the courtroom.
Yes.
I mean, he had fought for the half of his life to try to get justice. And that's what we did with Henrietta Lacks.
I want to take a moderator's privilege to say publicly to you, Attorney Ben Crump, this is Women's History Month, but this man has made a concerted effort to take this black woman out of obscurity. He has taken me out of the shadows of a footnote. And I didn't know what he was doing before the trial, but he said, write down the name of your article and I'll get it in the record. I was like, what? And he did it. And he spoke truth to power. He told, at Southern University Law Center students, you are a part of that historical record. Because I don't stand alone. Let me do my rendition. Oh, my mama. Oh, my hood. We look hot. We look good. Because this man said in the Baltimore, Maryland court, professor, he said, Your Honor, we are here today talking about this unjust enrichment because of Professor DeLiso Alford, a law professor at Southern University, a historical black college, a part of the transcript, wrote about this over 10 years ago. And he said her article was disregarded. Then I started trying to ease that place. He just told you it gotta be disregarded. But he said, and then he built me back up. He said, because just like Henrietta Lacks, Your Honor, and we need to know that we are talking about unjust enrichment because of that article. And I'm told that judges usually don't do this, but from her bench, she said, thank you, Professor Alford.
Yes, she did.
I said, thank you, Jesus. But I don't remember doing that. But I did have all those emotions inside. But I want you to know something else about Attorney Crump. He's talking to us about these injustices, but what I witnessed in that courtroom was how the courtroom became an educational setting for the judge, the federal judge. He also put in the record about speaking truth to power. He also put in the record about ongoing medical racism. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow during the panels of how important it is to know your history in order to be able to contextualize it for a decision maker. That judge had to know that she was not only talking about Henrietta Lacks, that she had to know about the U.S. Public Health Service Syphilis Study at Tuskegee. She had to know about Fannie Lou Hammond. She had to know about the World War II men who were experimenting on with the
faulty gas masks.
The World War II, okay? They experimented on black and brown men to determine what was the effect of this mustard gas. So she had to see all of that as a part of her education. And I witnessed her lean in. I think that's when the other side got scared.
Yeah.
Because it took 2 years. 2021 filed, 2023 the first historical settlement, and we had an opportunity. There's a photo that's going to show Mr. Lawrence Lacks, who was 88 years old, his hand being held up because he had his day in court. And he also told me that he's glad that I was on his team. Now, so for attorneys, we need to know that to have a client who understands his vital role in the legal play-to-play system, that is critical. So that meant that the attorney had to make sure that he had a team. And Mr. Lawrence Lacks and the Lacks family became a part of our team. And so we went around educating, legal education, and next week we'll be at a medical college, because it's about that court of public opinion. So with that being said, as I heard you educate the judge about history being contained in books, why do you think at this time there's a present call to ban books?
It is my fault, that's true. No.
But did you all see the beautiful piece of art that's out there where they had him vanishing black history, and they got the 1619 part, they're trying to paint over it. That, I mean, it's incredible.
It's incredible. I wish you to speak on it because they're talking about this book with our history banning it.
This historical book that you wrote, it's almost like Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin. I mean, it's that important in American history. So we can't give you enough flowers.
So why? Why?
Why do they do what they do? Before I answer that, I just want to briefly touch on something that you said. Well, you calling everybody professors, and I had to call you Mr. Crump instead of Ben. You got to keep it respectful. But when you think about why is it so difficult for black people to succeed in unjust enrichment cases, it's the fear of the precedent, right? Because if you succeed in one area of unjust enrichment, where can you not go when it comes to black folks?
Yeah, reparations.
And of course, right, the ultimate is reparations. Because the entire country was unjustly enriched by the enslavement of African people. And since slavery was codified in our Constitution with the Fugitive Slave Act, the 3-5 Compromise, it was a federally sanctioned institution. And so there's this fear that if you give a little victory anywhere, just the same way, I mean, if you look at Brown v. Board of Education. So Brown v. Board of Education is a systematic, decades-long strategy to turn the law against the people who use the law to segregate us. And they begin by simply saying, okay, we're going to tackle you on Plessy, which says separate has to be equal. We're going to show that it's not. If you come in the South, there's no law school for black folks. There's no medical school for black folks. And then once they succeed there, they're able to actually topple segregation altogether. And once you topple segregation in schools, how can you say segregation is not constitutional in schools, but it's constitutional everywhere else in American life? So there's an understanding that if you allow black people to argue for repair, which is what these lawsuits are, then we can argue for repair in every other area. And where would it stop? It would be the city level, the county level, the state level, the federal level, and then every corporation from Chase Manhattan Bank to many others. So that's the fear. Because they know this is why, I mean, it really does get to the question, why are they banning books, but particularly why are they banning black history? Because they're not banning anyone else's history, they're banning black history. It's because if you gain that understanding, then where you arrive to is obvious, right? Because the way that they say we're not doing any repair is they don't really teach us that slavery was foundational to the United States, that slavery built the economic system of the United States, that slavery built our political systems, right, our legal systems. So if you downplay, if you treat slavery as an asterisk, as kind of marginal to the American story, then you never have to get to the debt that's owed. And if you don't acknowledge that the legacy of slavery doesn't end in 1865, you can't enslave people based on their race for 250 years, then pass the 13th Amendment and say, okay, now your race no longer matters. And then, of course, we only have 12 years of even trying to pretend race didn't matter, and then we enter the 100-year period of legal apartheid in the United States. So if you don't teach that history, then you make it easy to deny us our justice.
That's it.
So that's why the history is banned. When people say, why do they ban our history? Because our history is inherently political. Once again, every time you want to talk about American greatness, here we are, looking at you with the shame finger, right? Every time you want to talk about the Declaration of Independence, well, the man who wrote it enslaved human beings for a living. When he drafted the words of liberty, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with unalienable rights. He owned 230 human beings, including his own children, including his own wife's siblings.
Yes.
Right? You want to talk about the Constitution? Who wrote the Constitution? The father of the Constitution, his occupation, he enslaved black people. That was his job. The man who wrote the Bill of Rights, enslaver. 10 of the first 12 presidents, enslavers. The idea of republicanism comes from Virginia, which was a slave colony, which was the largest, the most heavily enslaved, and the wealthiest of all the colonies in the 13 colonies.
Teach.
But they would have you believe that that's all irrelevant. That somehow all these slaveholder white men did not build a society based on slavery. So when you learn that history, then you have to question everything else.
Everything.
Think about the greatest generation. The greatest generation, right? This idea of World War II being the United States is the great liberator to the world. But black men are going abroad, liberating white people in Europe and coming home and being lynched for wearing their uniforms.
Yes.
Medgar Evers, World War II veteran, killed by Myron De La Beckwith, a World War II veteran. Black men would come back from World War II and they would see German prisoners of war eating in white cafes that they could not eat in. So, greatest generation, we give the lie to that. Right? Well, you go to Vietnam, Korea, we're going abroad to save all these people from communism, to bring democracy to all these colored races. And black people are dying trying to vote right here in Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's why they ban it. Because what I understand, and we were talking about this at the table, you think we're winning, I don't know, I'm scared. But what I do know is that they are afraid of the power of knowledge.
Yes.
They are afraid of what happens when you know history. Because the reason I became a journalist and not a historian, even though history is my first love, is I knew that narrative drives policy. Not facts, not data, not research, unfortunately. It's narrative.
Yeah.
So what's the narrative about crime? Crime is out of control. If you look at the data, crime is still going down. But you can pass amazingly regressive policy to hurt black folks if you get control of that narrative. Right? So the fear that too many, not so much us, I don't think they were that worried about black folks learning this history, but it was too many white folks who were learning this history. And so if you get enough white folks who learn the history, then they're going to join with black folks, and we can change policy in the United States. That's where the backlash comes from. The backlash comes after 2020, the largest protest for racial justice in the history of the world. For the first time in the history of the Black Lives Matter movement, more than half of white people supported Black Lives Matter. Almost half of Republicans in polling said that race was a primary obstacle to black advancement. Now think about that. Republicans who think that everything that's wrong with black people is black pathology, who think we all have equal opportunity, and yet after George Floyd, they are acknowledging that race is shaping our ability to succeed. That had to get an answer. The answer was book bans, critical race theory, attacking DEI. It was going back to the oldest wedge issue in America, which is the racial divide.
Attorney Crump, what do you have to say about
She said my answer was too long. We gotta move on. Sorry, y'all.
I had to try to get right to it.
No,
Take over tomorrow, watch.
I just think that everything Professor Hannah Jones said was right on point. Yeah, you know, history, what she just said about after George Floyd, Silk and us, we saw, you had as many young white people out there marching saying, until we get justice for George Floyd, none of us can breathe, that there were young black people. And that scared the hell out of America. That scared the hell out of America. These young white people were now joining sides with the young black people to say, we can do better, America. And they were afraid of that. The enemies of equality said, oh, we got to do something about this. And boy, like Professor Hannah Jones said, they started attacking. I think it goes even more elementary than that. George Washington Carver, well, two things. Number one, those who don't intend on teaching history intend on repeating history. Y'all will figure that one out tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, and then even the great Carter G. Woodson, the father of black history, there's a reason they want us to think our history is irrelevant.
Yes.
that we are irrelevant, insignificant, and inferior. They want to do that, y'all, intentionally. Because Carter G. Woodson said, when you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about telling him to stay here or to go yonder. Get in that courthouse, and when we walked through our courthouse, you know, going through security with them, we had to move the walker, and he was just so convicted that I'm going to go in this courtroom. And what was supposed to be an hour hearing turned into what, like a 4-hour hearing. And you remember, it was almost like a scene from A Time to Kill, a John Grisham novel. You had all Henrietta Lack's beautiful black family on one side of the courtroom, and they kept trying to tell us we can't make comments, we can't have outbursts of emotion. Professor Alfred. And then on the other side of the courtroom, we had all these fancy, like $1,000 lawyers who work for the pharmaceutical companies, all there taking notes. And that transcript that she read from, really pain came down to this very fundamental question. Why is it that the children and grandchildren of John D. Rockefeller and Henry Ford and Mary Kate Ash and Bill Gates, their children never have to come in court to get compensation for the intellectual properties that their grandfathers and grandmothers gave the world? But Alfred and Kim and Ron, they had to come begging the court.
For 70-year pursuit.
Yeah, begging. And what that moment culminated to me, walking out with that old black man who finally got his day in court. And that we hadn't got, you remember the judge hadn't ruled yet, but it was a victory just to get in the courtroom. He had been fighting for 30 years. People said we were crazy when we filed the lawsuit. You talking about having to have courage. I mean, all the stuff they talk about black people when we dare exalt our humanity.
Yes.
When we dare have the audacity to say that we deserve everything that the Constitution say American citizens deserve. And that's what it was. And the last thing I'll say, ma'am, Mr. Lax died 6 weeks after we got the victory. 6 weeks. And part of me believes, you're talking about what Nikole said, you may not get the success when you're supposed to. They were supposed to get it when Jet Magazine in the 1970s said it was a black woman who had these sales when the Swedish doctors started saying, oh my God, who are these sales from? And they had been lying, talking about it was a white woman named Helen Lane.
Helen Lane.
It's in Alfred Carter's book, Shadows of Immortality. They talk about it. They tried to lie, Nikole, and say, we had to tell people that the sales were from a white woman because if they knew it was a black woman, America was so racist, even though the sales were helping them and saved lives and so forth, they wouldn't have took it. But it was the Swedish doctors, right? Professor Alfred, Alfred was the foremost expert on Henrietta Lacks. She studied far more than the white lady. She has studied, when you read that article, she has broke it down. And yeah, and she ain't we gonna give her flowers if nobody else gonna give. And I said they tried to disregard you like they disregarded Henrietta, and I did that intentionally in court. Because I want them to look in the mirror and notice the hypocrisy. And so when we were there talking about those Swedish doctors who said, who is this Gila cell woman? And it was them who finally made it become known in America in their medical articles, and their Jet Magazine got a hold of it. And they should have got their compensation in the 70s and the 80s. But it didn't happen till 2020. It was 40 more years of laboring in the vineyard, fighting, being spit on, being said y'all crazy, and all of that there for us to finally get in the courtroom. And that's why that picture meant so much, because I think when we won that victory, he finally said, I can rest.
A good fight, he fought a good fight.
He finally said, I can rest. I would imagine he got up to heaven and he said, Mama, I fought a good fight and we got justice. Look how beautiful.
This is Mrs. Henrietta Lax and Mr. Lax, David Lax. This, now, the thing about disassociating Gila Sales, H-E-L-A, they used the first two letters of her first name and the last two letters of her last name to hide her anonymity, called her Gila Sales. And so what we were able to do is to humanize her. That's what we're going to continue to humanize her. Because what Attorney Big Crump also said is that Henrietta Lax Gila Sales are Henrietta Lax. Henrietta Lax lives in each of us. So I want you all to look, because you benefit from medical advancement, polio vaccine, in vitro fertilization, gene mapping,
COVID vaccine.
Gila Cells, the basis of that. So when I tell people that from all races and all that, then they just kind of look, right? Because this is a phenomenal woman, and we want to thank you, Lax Legacy, for sharing her with us at this time, because we know that you were her, that's your grandmother. And when I wrote that article, I did it for selfish reason called tenure.
I was doing some research for a speech I'm giving, and I was reading David Walker's Appeal. Have y'all heard of David Walker's Appeal, young people? Look it up.
That's your assignment.
This is a black man in 1827 who was telling black folks, you need to rise up. And if you need to kill these slave masters to get your freedom. In 1827. So I'm thinking to myself, y'all won't even talk back to your boss at work. But you're gonna say you aren't your ancestors, so for me, and that's not to shame any of us, but what it is to say is we all have a debt to pay.
Amen.
Now the student loan debt's gonna come through soon enough, but I'm talking about a different type of debt, okay? Every one of us are able to sit in the spaces that we're in because of what our ancestors bore. My grandmother, Arlene Tillman, was born on a cotton plantation in Greenwood, Mississippi. She had a 4th grade education. She had to leave school so she could help raise her siblings because everybody in that household had to work to eke out a living. My father was born on that same plantation. My grandmother left when they were 2 years old on the train and came north, and the best job she ever got was a janitor. Every ambition, every dream she had, she wasn't able to live because she was a black woman born in 1924 in apartheid Mississippi. But she allowed me to live the life that I live. So how can I say I'm afraid, or it's too hard, or complain about the life that I had? What you need is conviction. Because here's the thing. You might look at, I don't know all the struggles that you went through, but I can tell you there were times when I was nearly run out of journalism, where I got into journalism, had my tenure taken away from me at the University of North Carolina, even though I had more awards than everybody in the entire journalism school combined. So we know we're not playing on an even playing field. We know that. We know that when I got into journalism, the only thing I wanted to do was write about black folks. That's why I became a journalist. There were enough people writing about white folks.
That's right.
There was enough white people writing about black folks. I wanted to tell our stories, but my newspapers did not want me to do that. I had to decide, am I going to do what they want to do so that I can succeed, or am I going to do what I have to do to live with myself? Now, I managed to be successful. But there were many black folks, because of their convictions, they didn't find the success that I found. And so I think we all have to decide what's more important. To be successful, but you can't look yourself in the mirror because you sold yourself out?
Courage.
So I can honestly say, everything that I have, I never sold myself out one time. But you just have to understand. being that person of courage, of conviction, of paying back that debt may mean it's gonna take you longer to find success. You're gonna work in law firms that are not going to appreciate the work that you want to do, who won't value the work that you want to do. But why are you here? Because if you're just here to be another one of them, we don't need you.
Amen.
So just be clear in who you are. I know your path might be longer, it might be harder, but that's what's worth it. And the one thing that you have, this is what I tell my students all the time, you can't control anything outside of yourself. You're gonna face racism. If you're a woman, you're gonna face sexism. If you come from working class folks like I did, you're gonna face classism. You're gonna face every ism possible. You can't control any of that, how people perceive you, what they think about you, but you control your own excellence. So you be as excellent as you can in what you do, and it's amazing how they can't keep you down. Yeah, excellent.
All right. I just like for you to understand that the courage that these two speak of, they're just not talking. They are courageous. They are examples of courage. And there is a part of a transcript that's about to come up that I really want to pay attention to, and it's the transcript on generational wealth. We're here to celebrate and honor Mrs. Henrietta Lacks, but I want to read this from the transcript. Attorney Ben Crump.
That's right.
He said, you don't have to send him to the back door.
Yep.
He would go without being told, because he said it wasn't enough to remove the shackles from my wrists and from my ankles, but we got to remove the shackles from our minds.
All right.
And that's what education was about. He said that if you can control a man's thinking, you don't even have to have a back door. He will cut one for his own special benefit if it's not there. That's how important it is that we teach our young people about our history and our culture, and that it's important as anybody else's history and culture, that we contribute it just as much, because our children have to know that our ancestors were not the mere footnotes of American history. We were the heroes of American history. And that's why I think, well, first thing that the brilliant Nikole Hannah-Jones said, I think they are trying to ban it for that, those reasons. They don't want us to know how awesome we are, and how no matter what the enemies of equality throw at us,
Yes.
they cannot keep black people down.
All right. Well, make me go around again. Bread of heaven, what did he say? Feed me till I want no more. Let me tell you, I can sing, I had to usher, but what I do know is that we are
We should have some
here
bourbon
in
up
a
here.
room with great thinkers who are astounding to us. This is historic. And when you spoke to the youth, and I'm going to ask this question because I just think it speaks to, I need to put my glasses on so I can see it. Wow. Can you speak on where to find the courage as a young black lawyer in training to speak unapologetically without ending our career before it starts? Can you speak on where to find the courage as a young black lawyer in training to speak unapologetically without ending our career before it starts?
You know, it kind of starts with the example of what Nikole Hannah-Jones, Professor Alfred, Brooke Cluse, LaRuca May, all these thought leaders, lawyers, Silky Slim. It first starts with courage. You got to have the courage. I mean, I was talking to a hero of mine, great lawyer Billy Murphy, up in Baltimore, Maryland. Billy said, Crump, he said, you know, what inspires me about you, and I know we're artists, I can't say exactly what he said. He said, Negro, you ain't scared. And that's half the battle, young
All right,
people.
that's the answer.
You first gotta say, there's nothing they can do to me that they haven't already tried to do to my ancestors.
Yes.
And we still here.
Yes.
And so you're already brilliant. I believe, I keep suing Governor Ron DeSantis, now I'm about to sue Governor Ron Abbott in Texas.
Sue everybody.
We gotta sue them all because it has to be strategic defiance to
Yes.
this overt discrimination.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is overt racism that they're doing from 45 and now these 45 juniors who want to be like him. And since they are doubling down and being bold with the attack on our people, we got to double down and be bold in defense of our people.
That's right.
And we can't be scared, y'all. Young people, I'll say this and hand it back to Nikole. Y'all, you would be amazed. You would be amazed when you speak truth to power. Now, they might be mad. They might call you names. They might do everything about you. But they will respect you for standing up for your people. I have seen it in countless cases. They pay us greater value in the civil arena. Judges give us discretionary calls because they say these Negroes are standing up and they are not afraid. And you gotta at least be willing to fight for what you believe dear to you. And for me, that is you all young people. I am fighting because I believe so much in you all. Nikole and I was talking, we're winning, and the reason I think we're winning is because of you all.
Yes.
Because y'all are reading her book, y'all are getting bolder,
Yes.
y'all are getting smarter, and I tell you that the enemies of equality cannot win this war. They cannot win this war as long as we make sure that our children are more intelligent than those who seek to oppress them. We win. As long as
Nikole Hannah-Jones, I have this question, I have this for you. You have said, and I quote, "If we are truly a great nation, the truth cannot destroy us." What does that mean to you? What did you mean when you said it?
Well, I don't want to answer the other question, but I'm answering it.
My students in here watching, I don't let them do that. They have to answer the question being posed.
Since you are Nikole Hannah-Jones, go right ahead.
I'm gonna
Answer the question you want.
Aries don't follow rules. So I do think, though, it's important. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to your particular profession, but I think it doesn't matter what profession you're going into.
That's right.
If you are black in this country. I don't think we have a choice but to be courageous. I think we dishonor our ancestors if we're not courageous.
Say that again.
Because we don't live
She
under
didn't
circumstances. I don't like instructions. But I'll say that again, I will say this again, right? We don't have a choice. I remember a few years ago, this meme going around that young folks thought was cool, and it said, "I am not my ancestors." And I said, "You're damn right." Because you couldn't bear half of what our ancestors did.
And I was isolated in my thinking. And so what is happening now, what you're hearing Attorney Ben Crump say, is that we have to have intentional collaboration. The legal academics that are here today, we have Professor Jose Anderson, we have Professor Suzanne Malvo, who's a constitutional scholar, who also had to write an amicus brief to tell them about the statute of limitations, that no, it's not over. You decide 24 hours after her. So we are here today to say say that we have to be intentional about our collaborations in order to have a unified front. We can no longer be to exist in silos. And so as we honor the memory and the life and legacy of Henrietta Lacks, I want you to join me in honoring these people.